Welcome to Silverdale's new podcast. This is a new form of communication. We're starting to share the stories, ideas, and conversations that shape life here at Silverdale Baptist Academy. This podcast is designed to share the life, mission, and heart of our academy. It's a busy world, and it's so hard to get everyone in the same room, but this new podcast is a way to connect with our families wherever you are through meaningful conversations about faith, learning, and student life. Each of our episodes will highlight the people, programs, and ideas that make SBA unique, while also seeking to equip parents with insights and tools to help their children thrive. Our hope is that these conversations will strengthen the partnership between the school and the home and the church, that three-legged stool that Ms. Hansard talks about, as we work together to help our students think critically, love sacrificially, and live biblically. Today, our first episode, we have invited MyChelle Pinkerton and Veloz, both of whom serve as counselors here at the Academy. We're so thankful that they're here. Our students love them. Our families love them, even if they have to spend a little bit of time in their office from time to time. So welcome to you both. We're glad you're here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thanks so much.
So if you had to describe, give us a little context, maybe a little background for our time together today. If you had to describe the mental health of our students, our families, even culturally speaking, what would you say? We have a large academy, right? K to 12. So we've got students all over the map in terms of ages. So just give us some general thoughts about the mental health of our students.
I think we could all agree that the occurrences of feeling anxiety and having these anxious feelings is just a little bit more elevated than what we may have seen 6, 7, 10 years ago. Spring semester brings its own set of unique factors that can raise the anxiety for those in the upper school, especially for our seniors. They're looking at their last semester here. Testing happens in the spring, and we've come out of winter. We're so glad we made it through the dark and the gray.
Amen.
And
yes,
we want to
right.
be outside. And so the littles might have a lot more energy that they're trying to burn off. But I think it looks different depending on the age, but I would say there are more cases that we're seeing where anxiety is the contributing factor for why kiddos are with us.
Yeah, so Lauren, let's maybe break that down by age, right? So like if we think about, let's say I'm an elementary parent, how is anxiety or stress going to manifest itself so that I know that that's actually what it is and not just maybe pent up energy,
Sure.
The need to get outside after a long school day? How do I differentiate between those for elementary students?
Well, I think with elementary, you think about their need for having control in things, because when the world feels scary, when things feel overwhelming, they want to have control over all the things. And that might look like avoidance of school. Like, hey, I don't want to go there. I'm gonna make everything come up, and I'm gonna tell you all the different reasons why I can't go there. I can't be there. Maybe it could be that we need to have control over our routines and rituals, and we're going to ask a million different questions of what are we going to do today? What's going to happen next? Is everything okay? Or maybe there's situational anxiety. Okay, so we have storms. My son has that sometimes where he gets really, really anxious when storms are coming, and so he's asking me all the questions. Mom, what's the weather today? What's going to happen? Are we sure it's going to be safe?
That sounds so familiar.
Right? And so anxiety, its whole purpose is protective. And so it's seeing something that's scary, overwhelming, too much for my body to handle. And so I'm going to throw up all the stops to make sure that I feel control, I feel safe, and I'm going to avoid the thing that's overwhelming to my body. So that's what I see in elementary students.
Any thoughts about middle school, MyChelle? Thoughts that,
Yes. So it's a little similar for middle school. Like, they're going to throw up all the things to try to avoid. You're going to see more maybe tummy aches or visits to the nurse, avoidance of whether it's a particular class that maybe they're struggling in, or the grades aren't coming down like they wanted to. It could be there's a friendship difference there, right? That's a big thing that happens in middle school, is transition in social groups, transition in friend groups, especially for some of our kiddos that may have come up through the elementary and have hung together for a long time, and now we're experiencing a little bit of a difference. And so maybe during lunch or during breakout, we are just like, where'd that kid go? They have disappeared because they're trying to withdraw from that uncomfortable feeling. For my guys in middle school, what you may see, it may look more like anger. It may be these like rage outbursts because anxiety brings this energy and they're just trying to get it out. And so they may just come out of their window of tolerance and have this big explosion when that's not been their personality before.
Yeah. And I think to speak to the friend piece, especially in middle school, you really see that. I mean, it's definitely, you're seeing it in fourth, fifth, but you're really seeing it emerging because there's this identity formation that happens there. Who am I? Who do I belong to? And when we look at how the brain works, specifically with connection with other people, when we feel isolated or alone, that same feeling, when they look at the brain and how it lights up with stress, it lights up the same way as it would if the body was in starvation mode. The brain literally determines that there is a humongous stressor that we are experiencing simply from isolation. And so we're seeing lots of fear around what happens if I'm not accepted? What happens if I don't find belonging? And when those are challenged or when they're removed, like that's a huge threat to the system, and it leads to a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, well, if we can just stay in the middle school for a second, I don't know about the two of you or even the parents and guardians listening at home. I don't really look back on middle school with all that fondness, right? And what you describe in terms of loneliness, lashing out, anger, withdrawal, all of those things are things I experienced. I mean, are we dealing with something new or different here? I mean, to me, it sounds a lot like my middle school experience.
Right. I think the biggest difference for our current middle schoolers is when we were growing up, we did not have that connectedness through like social media and a constant newsreel that was going. Like, I think 24-hour news like peaked right when I was going into high school. And that was many years ago. So, you know, we're constantly on, we're constantly comparing. And so for us in middle school, like in the social aspect, we had a removal when we went home. It didn't keep going. It wasn't constantly still in our face. We weren't constantly dealing with it. Whereas for these kiddos, whether it's through their phones or social media, like even the ones that don't have a phone, they still experience that because there's a lot of connectedness that is happening with those that do, right? We see that difference come out more of like, there are more families who are like, we're just not ready, which is perfectly fine. There is still this aspect here of how do we still keep this kiddo feeling connected so that urge to be like, I am in this starvation mode. And so I'm hyper vigilant about all the things. How do we mitigate that with the decision that we're making?
Is it as simple as just calling it FOMO? I mean, is that an oversimplification? You know, the fear of missing out that all of us have a little bit. I mean, you know, if a bunch of my friends get together, I'm like, oh, I wish I could be there, or wish I had that experience. Or if another family goes on a great vacation, or, you know, does something really fun, or, you know, all of us have that, you know, a little bit of FOMO. Is that an oversimplification of what's going on? Or
I definitely think it's part of it. But I think the bigger picture is even just finding their connection, their root of worthiness is in it. That I'm worthy to be connected to, that I have friendships and I matter. And so when I don't have voice in those spaces, then it's, I have fear of missing out. But I fear that like maybe I don't belong anymore. I think some of the roots are in belonging.
Especially if they've had that group.
Yes.
You know, they've had that those close 4 or 5 friends. And then in middle school, for a myriad of different reasons, sometimes it's interests, different school schedules, you know, they're not in the same classes. Those friendships can begin to maybe some distance comes, and then you're not necessarily looking to make new friends, but you find yourself having to make new friends, and that's maybe more difficult than we want it to be.
100%.
Yes, and I think the other piece that sometimes we can forget that makes middle schoolers a bit more vulnerable in this aspect is what their brain is doing. Developmentally, their brain is rebuilding itself. It's trying to lay all the pathways down to bring that prefrontal cortex online. So all their energy is going into that. And that's why we see, you know, maybe a little bit more like the silliness and the goofiness that we joke about with middle schoolers of like, oh, they're walking in walls, or I'm talking to them and they're just not there. Well, their brain is rebuilding itself, but because of that, they're quicker to fall out of their window of tolerance and go to the basement of their brain, which is just all these like like reactions and how their body reacts, and they're in this fight, flight, or freeze mode on a more constant basis than those who are just a little further along in terms of their brain development. So they're quicker to get there than maybe our littles or some of our older ones or even adults. So where the fear of missing out kind of ups the ante is just the brain development of it all puts it at a higher level.
So for our 14 and 15-year-olds, as they come out of that middle school time, I can tell you, being directly involved as a high school principal, I don't necessarily see the anxiety becoming less. So even though their brain might be rebuilding itself through that 11, 12, 13-year-old, time in their life, it seems like it's continuing. I mean, what's the biology? I mean, I don't want to necessarily get too much into the biology because then you'll lose me because I won't understand it. But what's going on with all of that? Help me understand.
Well, something to speak to that is that, we got 15 to 18 that we're talking about. But what they've found is that prefrontal cortex, which is essential for a lot of our skills around self-management, impulse control, all of those pieces, it's not fully developed until you're 25. And so we still have developing prefrontal cortexes. And so the reality is that you're going to see a lot of the similar situations. Maybe they have a little more ability to have impulse control. They're not just blurting out what they just came to mind, right? But it's still something that's developing, and it's going to take a while for it to be fully online.
And that continues to impact relationships.
Yes. And then you bring in the social media aspect of it all. Like, they have trained themselves. And so in our brains, the path that we constantly use, it strengthens, and maybe a path we don't use so much kind of falls off. Not forever. It can be rebuilt, but they are training their brains that how we do connection, how we do relationship is through these quick, like, let me snap you real fast and let me do this. And then if you don't like what I'm saying, like with a little heart, they hit the like button. If you don't like it within 5 minutes or when I feel like you should, then there's a rift in the relationship. This is how they're laying down these pathways in their brains. This is how relationships go. They're this temporary, and they're real heavy on these immediate responses that may or may not happen. Whereas for adults, we can go, well, maybe they did not have their phone with them, or they're in class and they're not supposed to have their phone. Or,
right, yes.
They're asleep. There's a million reasons why they did not respond to whatever you sent as quickly as you thought they should. But because they don't have that prefrontal cortex online and they can't necessarily jump to that, it's something's off. Something's wrong.
Yeah, I've even heard some of my friends tell me that, like, when you have a text message, and if you don't fully respond to that text message, but you just put like one of those emojis on it, that they're like, oh, there's this language behind language of what's going on, and what happens is it moves us to threat, because anxiety is there to protect us. It's there to say, hey, something's off. We got to do something. We're going to dial into that relationship, but maybe we can actually pause and think, like, okay, there's more to the picture. But again, that takes a lot more development of the prefrontal cortex to get there.
So is there no hope because the biology can't do it? I mean, you're kind of like, well, I guess if I'm a parent of a teenager, like, I'll just long for the days of elementary school where I could give them a warm hug and a blanket and maybe a snack and everything is okay. That doesn't work for my 13-year-old or my 15-year-old or my 17-year-old. So are we just without hope there? I mean, or is the answer, I got to call the counselor because they can fix my kid? So what? Help me understand what, as a parent, as a guardian, as a grandfather, as someone who's trying to help this teenager, because I know, based on experience, anxiety doesn't end. No. You don't graduate from high school. You don't move on from 8th grade to 9th grade. You don't get past all of the social tension of school, and it just ends, and life is just all of a sudden without stress or anxiety. In some ways, it's even greater. You think about paying bills. I mean, the stress of bill paying and keeping a job or being successful in a field of some kind. You're in some ways, the stresses of school seem to be like, I wish I could go back to the stress of school. That was the test tomorrow is way different than the project or sales pitch or what have you of the next day. So where's the hope in all of this for the teenager?
Well, I think first and foremost, there's always going to be hope because, like, Jesus gives us hope, and
Yes,
He's
that's
going to
right.
give us
the
like
living hope, right?
Yes. And so with that, the name of the game is giving them tools to regulate, right? And I think sometimes as parents, when we start to see it when they're little, we want to jump in and we want to fix all the things, right? And I love Mrs. Thompson. She'll say that you cannot prepare the road. You cannot just clear all the things. You got to prepare the kiddo for the road. And so with that, we are giving them the tools to be able to notice, okay, when I am about to jump out of my window of tolerance, this is what's going on in my body. Here are the tools that I need to be able to regulate. So I'm in a better space to be able to use all aspects of my brain at whatever development point we're at that moment in time, so that I can, because we'll need that as adults, right? We are still regulating because we are still faced with challenges and obstacles, and knowing how to do that. We can't just be like, well, I'm just going to sit in the nurse's office until this passes. Like, I got to have the tools.
Because it's not going to pass.
It's never going to pass.
Well, and it's certainly, I love that you brought Jesus up. He is our living hope. There is an incredible peace that faith brings, and as parents, we certainly can model that when we see our children struggling. If we just dive in and struggle with them, that can create desperation in the heart of the child. But there is still something tangible about having those tools. So let's break that down into schools again. Okay, so if I'm dealing with the 3-year-old in the preschool, or the second grader, who's 8, and they're feeling that stress and anxiety, and I start to see it manifest itself kind of with some of the things that you shared earlier, what do I do?
Well, when we get to really little people, one of the things about regulation is that one of the most effective ways to regulate somebody or to regulate yourself is through rhythm. And the science around that is that we have neural pathways in our brain. So what she was talking about earlier, that there are things that when we use them over and over and over again, when they're repeated, it's something that becomes ingrained. We get, it's very strong. And so when we think about when we were the most safe, when all of our physical needs were met, when we were warm and we weren't hungry, the most regulated we've ever been was when we were in utero, when we were in mom's tummy. And so what was happening simultaneously at that time is we were hearing the constant rhythm of mom's heartbeat. And so that's our first neural pathway of like regulation and rhythm, they go together. And so when we think about itty bitty little people, when they're dysregulated, when they're not okay, when they're crying and they're fussing, what do? We pick up that baby, we bounce, we pat their butt, we find a rhythm. And honestly, if we're not finding the right rhythm, we're adjusting ourselves until we find that rhythm as something that moves and regulates them. As we grow, it looks different. So there's still like, okay, we think about maybe we're sitting and we're rocking. If we see children rocking, that's a means to attain regulation. Going for a walk, there's rhythm to it. When we're taking deep breaths, there's rhythm to it. When we listen to music, there's rhythm. So all of those things are things that are deeply regulating. So when we see those little people, that's what we're doing. We're picking them up. When we see a second grader, first, we're going to get low and down on their level, because when our bodies are big, and as adults, we are so much bigger than they are, we need to make ourselves small. We need to make our voice small. We need to acknowledge that we see them. That's actually something that's wildly regulating, is that when our amygdala, which is like our fire, what do we call it? The watchdog, the watchdog of the brain, when he's upset, right? When that part of that brain sees that it's being heard and it's seen and it's understood, it actually settles that part of the brain. So those are things that we can do too. It's about relationship and connection. It's seeing your child and saying, ooh, that feels big. Tell me about it. Or do you just need a hug? It's giving them option for like ways that they have control, where they can enter into that relationship where there's safety. Because when they're little, they cannot regulate on their own. In fact, they have found that up till 8 years old, they can't regulate it by themselves. They need something called co-regulation. And that's found in that parental or that caregiver bond, where that person sees them, acknowledges that something's overwhelming, and works to meet that need, whether that's through rhythm, through walking, through patting, through all those things, through, ooh, that feels heavy. I'm here. Tell me about it. Or let's take a couple deep breaths and go for a walk. All of those are tools that we teach them. But what MyChelle said earlier, the pre-work is saying, noticing their emotion, acknowledging their emotion. I'm seeing that you're feeling really overwhelmed right now, giving them language to it and saying, let's do something to calm ourselves together. Because when we bring regulation and when as adults we come regulated to the table, we're able to share our regulation with them. There's a really beautiful quote, and I wish I brought it with me, but it's the idea of when our child comes with chaos, we have to be the calm that they can come and share with us.
Yeah, that's really good, because you're right. For me to think about, I mean, I can think back as a dad, just the mistakes that I've made with my young kids when they were really little. I can often trace back to myself being unhealthy, right? That I wasn't, to use your word, regulated, right? That I maybe wasn't at my best emotional self. And so dealing with that struggling 4-year-old or the 6-year-old or the 7-year-old who's throwing a temper tantrum in the middle of a store, my gut response, I'm going to tell you, is to jerk that child up by the scruff of their neck and carry him out on their ear, and throw them in the back of the car and hope that regulates them, like figure it out.
Get it together.
Like, I see you and it's a problem, I think that's probably more my mode of communication. So you're right. So as an adult, then, I know we're skipping, maybe ahead here to adulthood, but okay, so what are the things, maybe it's been a hard day for me.
Yes.
Maybe my cup is really full, and maybe my kid doesn't like the fact that we're not having chicken nuggets for dinner. And so they are full blown, laid out on the floor, acting in all kinds of ways that we find embarrassing, or that we have a problem with, or we don't like. And because I've had a really hard day, I am not going to respond kindly in that. I'm not going to see that child. I'm going to throw that child in their room, get away from me, here's a tablet, an iPad, here's a TV show. Just stop.
Yes.
All I want you to do is just stop. Whatever the manifestation of what they're feeling, right?
Yes.
And so help me out as an adult real quick. When I'm in that situation, or I'm dealing with that 15-year-old who is exploding because they're, the person that they really liked doesn't like them back, or their girlfriend said something ugly to them, or their boyfriend posted something that made them question their loyalty. All of those things that teenagers go through. As an adult, what helps me respond if it's been that hard day?
I think for parents, we have to think on it on two different planes. One is we always need to be aware of the story we are telling ourselves when our kid is behaving in a way that we feel is they should not be, right? It immediately, we start telling ourselves a story about ourselves that links to our identity, that links to our worth, and oftentimes our reaction is out of that, right? Like, if my kid's behavior is linked to how I feel in terms of being a quote unquote successful parent, and they're not behaving in such a way that I think lines up with that, I'm shooting out of my window of tolerance, because I'm like, you are reflecting poorly on me. So on one hand, we need to always be checking with that story and make sure that it's lining up with the truth of God's word, right? The same way we would want our kids to link their identity to Christ, we need to be doing the same thing, right? While at the same time making sure that just on a random Tuesday that we are having moments where we are caring for ourselves, whether that is you have a workout routine, or you're able to get away, whether it's just to the basement, and no kids, to you can check in and just be like, how am I feeling today? What am I needing to be able to fill my cup? Like, what am I doing to stay connected to the word and stay connected to Christ? And how am I caring well for the body that he's given me so that I do have capacity? Because we are going to have bad days. But if we come in and we don't have capacity for that, we're shooting out of our window too fast. And so we're not looking for like perfection. We want progress, right? So there are going to be those days that we do it wrong and we fumble it. But I think for our kids, it's such a beautiful picture if we can acknowledge that and just go, even if you're in the middle of it, and then you come to awareness and go, okay, this is going terribly. So you're going to go to your room and you're going to regulate, and I'm going to go to mine and I'm going to regulate. Right. And I need a good 45 minutes, right? Because that's when our window starts to close back up. So after 45 minutes, we're going to try this again. And it's not that we're going to rehash everything that just went down. We're going to start at the point of kind of going, okay, I was not in a great space. But here is where I was feeling. Now you tell me what's going on with you, right? And we start at that moment. And that's what we encourage parents to do with each other, right? In marriages, because you're going to be dysregulated in that too.
That's right.
But we don't go back and we rehash the fight, because that's going to elevate you right again. Start at the point of like, okay, this is kind of where we are. Here's where we're going. What do we need to do to be able to repair?
Yeah, and I think she brings repair at such a beautiful time, because I think we can walk into, I think any parent listening can identify times just like you did, right? Where, I mean, I had one last week. I'd taken my 3-year-old to, she had been at school all day. Then we went to gymnastics. Then we went to Frozen. And I'm around a lot of parents, and my 3-year-old didn't get to meet Anna. And oh my gosh, it's the end of the ever-loving world. She is flailed back, screaming as I am walking out, holding her in my arms. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can move so quickly. And there are moments where I had to like talk to myself. I can move so quickly to shame of like, ooh, the counselor's daughter is literally having an episode right
That's
here.
impossible.
Why
Not to
would
the
this
counselor.
happen, right? And so like I can go there. So I just want to say, every single one of us comes to this broken. Like we come to parenting with not enough skills, and no one's taught us how to do this stuff. And there's sin that like dwells within each of us. And so
baggage from how we were raised too. And all,
yes. And so repair is inevitable, and it's necessary. And the beautiful thing is that repair actually is something that's hugely protective to our children. Mm-hmm. When we can go and acknowledge and say, hey, when I did that, when I reacted that way, I wasn't in control of myself anymore. And I said things that hurt you, that harmed you, and that was wrong. And I'm sorry that I hurt you. And part of that repair is then we shift. We start to say, mommy is going to, or daddy is going to do better next time. Mom's going to try to really work on taking deep breaths when I feel overwhelmed. And that way I can meet your needs better. But here's the reality is that when we do that, I think sometimes parents think that then we're putting our kids in positions of authority, but it's not.
No,
it's actually giving them a place to model what healthy repair looks like, because we're all going to have relationships for the rest of our lives, and we're all going to harm each other. Like that's just part of relationship in this sinful world. And so it's learning, how do we reconnect? How do we repair? How do we own our sin? And I think there's something that's really beautiful that's done in that space. And so just because we have these things that we've done wrong does not mean that it's all over. Like that's going to keep happening. Mm-hmm. We have to learn how to repair well.
Mm-hmm.
That's so good. While you were sharing that, I was thinking about that verse in 1 John, where John writes and he says, if we confess our sins, he, that is God, is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Mm-hmm. And we know that relational sin requires for confession, forgiveness, and that's very different than just, hey, I'm sorry.
Right.
That will you forgive me, humbles yourself, humbles me before the other person, and asks for them to give me something, right? For them to acknowledge that I wronged them, and then also join me in the repair of that relationship. And children are incredible because they forgive so much easier than adults.
Yeah.
The heart of that 5-year-old, she loves her mommy, he loves her mommy. Like if mom is, gets down on their level and says, I'm sorry. I know for me, when I've gotten down on my level with my children and said, I'm sorry, and that has happened more often than I really want to admit, they are so good. They move on so fast.
Yeah.
There's no bitterness. There's no, and look, parents sin in all kinds of traumatic ways against their children too. Yes. And that's a different thing.
Yes.
We're not talking about some of the traumatic things that can happen to children that are awful. We're talking more about that daily relational sin that can just pop up so quick, almost without purpose. You're like, oh man, I just really messed that up so much. How did I even get here? And in those moments, I have found my children, by the grace of God, and really it's from their Heavenly Father, to give so much mercy to their dad, who screws it up a lot. I wish I didn't, but it's true. And so I'm really, really thankful for that. So let's go back. Let's think about, okay, that middle school student, that high school student. What tools are there for them to self-regulate? I mean, we've talked a little bit about the brain. It's rebuilding itself. Is it even capable of regulation? Is that something that, my 13-year-old can go, okay, I'm feeling this kind of way. I need to do this. Or do they always need an adult to say, oh, hey, hold on, you're dysregulated. I know you have no idea what that word means, but it's true. You are. Here's what you need to do. Yeah, that's right. What is that? What is that? Preteen, 11 to 14-year-old.
Yeah.
What do they do?
Yeah, I think for them, it's a balance of both. They need the input from others that can go, hey, you got a lot going on and I need you to figure that out. But also within themselves, they can learn what that feels like. And so it's a lot of teaching them of when they're on the on-ramp to having this big anxiety expression of what that feels like in their body, because that is the time to start implementing the skills, whether it's through the breathing exercises, and there are so many, they can pick whichever one feels great for them.
Hold on one second. I'm sorry to cut you off, but give me an example of that. Give me a couple different examples.
So with the breathing exercises, it could be the box breathing, where you're drawing a box, and I often tell them you can just do it on your leg. Nobody knows what you're doing, but you're inhaling for 4, holding it for 4, exhaling for 4 until you have your box. And you do that maybe 3 or 4 times. It could be for some of those that are in the arts, that either they sing or they act and they're used to engaging their diaphragm. That diaphragmatic breathing is really great for them. It's great for everybody. It's just, it takes a little bit more practice to do. You breathe, when you do your inhale, you're expanding your belly like it's a balloon. And when you're exhaling, you're deflating it. And I always tell them, I want you to try to put your belly button to your back. And doing that for a couple of rounds. And that kind of calms them. It's a lot of educating them of what anxiety feels like, because I think sometimes for them, there could be a little bit of a social contagion, right? Where they're all like, I'm so anxious. And it's like, are you fearful or are you anxious? Did you prepare for that test or did you not? Because if you didn't, then I think you might be fearful, right? There's a specific thing. It's a short-term thing. That is fear. That's not necessarily anxiety, but they're all like.
How do you tell the difference? I mean,
Yeah.
Because we've all had that, I've studied for hours, but I'm afraid I'm going to bomb this test, right? And we've also had that, there's a test today? Oh, no.
Yeah,
right?
yes,
Okay, I don't know about the two of you. You're way more educated than me, so that has been my experience. I've had both of those. So
I'm like, that's happening. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yes. So oftentimes with fear, we can point to something specific, and it's short term. Right? Once that event or that particular thing has passed, it's going to subside. Anxiety lingers. It's almost like it's this underlying kind of energy current that's going, and it spreads to all kinds of things. I often say anxiety loves to exploit the good, and it doesn't play by the rules, right? Fear, once that event, if a bear were to enter this room, fear would kind of rise up in all of us. If the bear, by God's grace, left and we all live to tell the story, then it's going to subside, right? Anxiety is this occurrence of there's always going to be a bear. It's just lurking, and whenever it busts through, that's when, and it never really.
It's not actually a real.
Right. Sometimes it's not attached to a real threat. Sometimes it is. There was a big event that happened, and now I'm constantly running this tape of when is that going to happen again.
Which that also could be trauma related.
Absolutely.
Too, right? Which we can cover
Absolutely.
later. But it's that kind of thing. That just helps my understanding.
Yeah. And I think for parents too, they can use that, because with this time period of middle school, it is a lot of pouring in and kind of what I say, educating them, because they don't know. They have no clue. And if they're just looking to their friends to tell them, they're probably getting wrong information, right? So educating them.
Maybe that other 13-year-old isn't the.
They cannot be the expert. Help us all. You want to set yourself up to be the expert, because also in middle school, we're seeing there are all kinds of things that come up that you want to be the one speaking into that, not necessarily their peers. You want to be the quote unquote authority and the expert that they're going to to get more information on all the things that could come up at that point. So with that, telling them what it feels like, it could be they get butterflies in their stomach, right? And educating them that sometimes, because our brains are beautifully built, but also a little lazy sometimes. And so when's the last time you ate? Because hunger can travel that same pathway, right? And so like it is when they're in kindergarten, do you need a snack, right? Or
It could be that simple.
It could be that simple. When's the last time you had water? And not a carbonated water, just water.
Right.
You know, so keep them fed, keep them watered. When's the last time you moved your body? Because that stiffness that as adults, we know we can feel stiff if we're not moving. They're like, I'm locked up. I must be anxious because, you know, and it's like, you haven't moved for days. You've just been on this video game. Like, maybe let's go for a walk and just experience the sunshine and see what
vitamin
happens.
D in your life.
Just a little. Like, it could be life-changing. It could be simple, like, are you tired? Right? Because when we're sleepy, we're not thinking clearly because our brain hasn't had the opportunity to clear all the junk from the day before. And so that brain fog or that jumping to conclusions, oh, I must be anxious. No, I think you might just need a nap. What's sleep like for you?
We have a tendency maybe to overdiagnose a little bit, right?
Yes.
And because our kids know the language,
Yes.
they're going to use the language regardless of whether or not they really mean that.
Because the language also means someone's coming to help me, right?
Oh, that's true.
So I think that she's right with the idea of like, there's a lot of physical needs that need to be met. And so I think that whenever you're looking at your child and you're seeing dysregulation, my first jump is, are you hungry? I have snacks in my car all the time because mine are.
Might be hangry.
They may be hangry. I know that I get that way. All of my children got that genetic gene. You know, that's me. And so, yeah, are you hungry? Are you tired? Like if you can see they're having quicker meltdowns and they're having a lot more dysregulation, maybe they just needed a nap. Maybe they need some quiet time because I don't know, coming home from school, it's a lot. It's been a really big day. There's been a lot of social demands, a lot of physical demands, a lot of mental demands. We need that time and space to be like, how's a day? How about a snack? Let's have some time to calm down. And then we can engage in other spaces. But having some of those rhythms, because I think that's one thing to notice, like as a parent, when do you notice your child's having more dysregulated moments? That might be a cue for you to say, ooh, if it's happening routinely right here, there might be a need that needs to be met that is physical versus something that's mental or emotional.
And that lets some air out of the room too.
Yes.
I mean, it makes me feel better to think, oh, maybe what's happening with my child is a physical need. I can meet that.
100%.
That to me seems easier than like trying to unpack this unformed brain.
Yes.
That needs like, oh my goodness, I don't even know what's firing. I don't know what's going on in there. Oh, they need a nap? We can do that. We can get them a snack.
And you know, and to lean into it a little bit further, okay, so we can meet that physical need, but you can also meet that emotional need. That might mean that every single night when you sit down with your child, I think this is like, it's not the best kept secret, but like, hey, if they're going to bed, they want to talk to you then. Because they don't want to go to bed. It's a secret. Yeah. But really, they're trying to avoid bedtime. But that's a beautiful time to sit down and say, hey, how was your day? For like, what was your EC today? For all my elementary friends, like, what happened? How was recess? Who did you play with? Who would you sit with? Check in with them. Because those are the spaces where they can even bring some of their burdens and say, oh, this was really hard. I didn't know how to talk to this friend. Or this was something that happened and I felt really lonely. And that acknowledgement of like, man, I felt lonely. I see you. Being seen by another person and understood by another person is incredibly powerful and incredibly regulating. So that simple task of like, hey, make sure they're fed, they're watered, they're slept, right? They have all those things, right? And then also that they're just connecting with you. And I hear parents who are like, oh my gosh, Lauren, I don't have 3 hours on a Saturday to go give to the child to do like one-on-one time because I've got 7 children, right? It's not about the 3 hours. It's about the 10 minutes. It's about finding little windows where I see you, where I connect with you, where I say, how was your day? I want to know everything about you, right? It's for your little people, hey, let's go paint our toenails together and talk about it. Or let's go color a picture. Maybe it's that 10 minutes after school when we get home and we just sit together and we eat a snack and, hey, just sit next to mom. You know, it's connection. Those things are so underrated. Like, those are the things that are hugely valuable, and they're money in the bank relationally with your child. They feel seen, they feel known, they feel understood, and those are so primary. When they feel that with that connection with their parents, it changes a lot of things.
Okay, so as the parent of an older teenager, a high school student, some of these things
Don't go paint your son's toenails.
I know it doesn't really sound like it's going to apply.
Right.
So and the role of the peer, we all know
shifts.
that
It does shift.
16-year-old, that 18-year-old, they don't see their parents as an authority on anything, much less an expert.
Right.
So now what do we do? What's the opportunity for regulation for those teenagers, and what do we do as parents and guardians? What's that look like?
So that shifts because your role as parent shifts, right? At this point in high school, you're beginning to shift into that role of advisor, right? In preparation for when
Maybe
you launch
mentor?
them. Mentor, right? And so if you're so blessed to be the house that everybody comes to, you get to regulate with all of them, right? And it's usually around food, which is great, not for your budget, but great for their system, right? Feed them and just be there. And it's not necessarily that they're engaging you like one-on-one. It's in packs, right? So if you get to be that, you just be there, you hear all the things, and then maybe not during bedtime, but if you happen to be in the car together, right? Bring it up. How was this? Or they'll just start talking. It's often when you're not engaged in like eye-to-eye contact with them. If you're shoulder to shoulder with them, just let them go. Just you're learning all the things. It could be at night, not necessarily that you're tucking them in, but they're saying, "Hey, I'm home," and that's when they want to talk. Like when it's never
It's always
fails.
when I'm falling asleep.
Right. It's
Why-
when
why
we're
is that?
exhausted, when we are absolutely at our point. They're like, "Now is the time," and you just got to power through because that is such a huge. Because they're like, "You're still my person," right? And you can still speak into that space. I also think part of it is you got to make sure your community is tight. Like you feel confident in the mentors that they have, in their coaches, in their youth leader, in all the things, because that's usually where they're going first, right? And
Well,
that's
that's one
just
of the reasons why Silverdale.
yes,
Right? Because our
Yes.
staff and faculty, the two of you, our administrators, like we are in it for kids.
Yes.
We love kids. We
Yes.
believe that they are image bearers of Christ, and every single one of them has infinite worth.
Yes.
Infinite worth. They arrive on campus with infinite worth. It's not earned by their grades, by their
Absolutely.
behavior in class, by whether or not they clean up after themselves at lunch. And all of those things are great.
Yeah.
But that isn't what gives them worth. And since
Right.
we believe that, we can jump on that bandwagon all day because we were already there.
Right, right. And that it's almost like we take that commitment as if we've taken that oath of, as believers, it is our duty to come alongside you to help you raise these kids. So you can trust that I'm speaking into them life and I am guiding them. And and actually I got your back, because when I see that they're disrespecting you, I'm like, hey, let me come talk to you for a minute. I understand that like you were out of your window, but however, we will not be disrespectful. We can do both, right? And so like you can trust that. So regulation for them is more on the relationship with peers, right?
Yes.
But also the relationship with the other adults. And so if you have confidence in that, you've surrounded them with some great quality mentors, that's where some of that's going to come in, right? It's easier. It's the biggest joke ever with some of the parents that I've worked with their kiddo is that I say the exact same thing that they told the kid, but they hear it from me. And it's because I don't live with them, and that's just the power of it. And so you have to have a confidence in that.
Yeah, I love that, because that's exactly, I mean, that's wrapped up into our mission, right? We partner with families, and certainly that's to provide, which we say an academic, excellence, an environment of academic excellence where with a biblical worldview, our parents, they desire that. We desire that. We want to train our students to think biblically, to think critically about their world from the view of Scripture.
Yeah.
And so our parents want that here too, but even more than that, it's that we might develop educated young people of character while preparing them to represent our Lord Jesus Christ in all walks of life, no matter what they're going to do beyond graduation or beyond the 6th grade or the 3rd grade, or whenever they leave Silverdale. We want them to be prepared to represent their Lord Jesus Christ. And that takes parents. It takes those of us here at school, and it takes the church. It does really take a village, to use the idiom, right? It takes a village to raise children. That's been true for generations, and it's true for us here at Silverdale. Well, I'm so thankful for you both. I look forward to continuing this conversation. Our next episode, we'll talk about some of the challenges that exist, some of the issues that parents have brought to us. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I wish they would have said, please email me. Please email either MyChelle or Lauren. We would love to hear from you. Love for you to send us some questions. We'll kind of work through those as we move forward. Thank you so much for being here today, for joining us on this first episode of our podcast. We're just excited for this space and all the things that are going to take place. Hope you have a wonderful day.